Welcome back, day 179 of a screenwriter's journey. And I've got to say, before we get started today, even though I am writing as I speak, I've been posting these on, well, I put them on YouTube and then I put a link in Facebook, the screenwriting page. I don't know if it is the screenwriting, but it's a big group. And then on Script Revolution. And as threatened, I did go back to YouTube analytics, and I think you need like at least 10 views or more to have anything even approaching meaningful analytics, and the results were not great. Um, no surprise, it appears that the average person is watching. Of course, all of them are different lengths, but the average person is not watching long at all. I would be, frankly, well, I do know from a person or two that someone or someones have watched all of at least a couple of the early ones. Frankly, since then, I have no idea. And so while I had delusions in the early days that this would somehow become a thing and catch on, and people would say, oh, I got to see what Jack posted today. I mean, clearly that was wishful thinking, to say the least, and as I said, delusional, or worst, to say the most. Or maybe that wasn't even the most. But it's apparent that, and in retrospect, no surprise that there is no real audience for this at the time. And really, why should there be? I'm not, I'm trying to think how to word this. I haven't had success as a writer in that I've never really gotten paid. I certainly don't make a living. I'm not a household name. I'm not even, well, I'm a household name in this household. But it's not like some famous writer, fill in the blank, decided to do this, which would have been really awesome if he or she had. But I am picking up the mantle for that person. And as I've said many times, if and when, I should say when, but I know better, this script gets sold, produced, made in front of an audience, I still contend that, I don't know, maybe there would be some call, there wouldn't be a demand for it because it's never been done, but there could be some interest on some people's part to go and listen, watch, seek this out and watch this. Having said that, it's been 179 days, and it's no secret that this is going to go way over 200 days. I'll tell you that right now, in case you are the one person who has been tuning in and watching all of these. And to think that anyone, let alone hundreds or thousands of millions or millions of people, would take the time. I mean, as I say it out loud, it's just totally silly and ridiculous. And I don't know. Can you tell? I'm just a little, it's not frustrated. I don't think, to me, as I said, I don't think it's been a waste of time. I think it's a great exercise. I think I've learned something. I think the main thing I've learned, not to give a takeaway or wrap this up or conclude it before I finish the whole series, which, as I said, is going to go on for many, many more days. But if I was to stop doing this today, I would say maybe the thing I've gotten out of it most is my shortcoming when it comes to not spending more time on the story, on the outline, on the index cards, a beat sheet, whatever you want to call it. And just, even though I know better, and obviously I haven't, if I had been writing like this for 20 or 30 years, 40 years, 100 years, and I'd sold even one script or 10 or 20, I would have every reason to keep writing the way I do, which is launching into the screenwriting aspect of it way sooner than I probably should. And again, there's no right way, there's no perfect way. I've heard of writers that just sit down and start writing fade in, or they don't even write fade in, they just start writing. I've heard of other writers who just spend lots and lots and lots of time in what you might call pre-production, and then once they start writing the script, they can just turn it out in no time flat. I don't know that one of those camps is more successful, probably the latter, or probably something approaching the latter. And so the question that I ask myself is, why don't you force yourself to spend more time? And I think the answer is, I just am not convinced that I can flesh out the characters, that I can tell the story in the form of a shorthand outline, treatment, synopsis, whatever you want to call it. And I don't know why. That's a great question, Jack. Why is that? I mean, have I not tried hard enough to do it? Have I tried a few times and given up or not been happy with the results? I would probably say yes. I'm trying to think back to all the scripts I've written. Because as I've said before, my typical MO is when a new idea comes to me, I let it gestate in my mind, not writing it down for many, many months, and then see if it formulates itself, if I keep thinking about it. And then I go, could this be an actual movie idea? Because they say ideas are a dime a dozen, and the more I write and think about that, the more I realize it's true. When someone says, oh, I got a great idea for a movie, that means almost nothing, really. An idea for a movie is so far, many leagues away, 20,000 leagues from anything even approaching a finished screenplay. I mean, you obviously have to have the idea, you have to have the beginning, middle, end, then you have to start filling in the pieces and parts. And granted that people who aren't inclined to do so won't do that, and you can't blame them for saying, oh, I got a great idea for a movie, and then they tell you the idea and then they go away and you never hear from them. And you can't fault people for that, because I don't know, it's not their gig, and they maybe think they're helping you or something by telling you that. But back to the original point of the shortcoming, I don't know. I guess I would acknowledge that it is a shortcoming. Does that mean I'm going to change my ways? We all know the definition of insanity about doing the same thing over and over, blah, blah, blah. And so has that been what I've been doing over the last X amount of years? I know I've made the 3 scripts that I turned into movies, and one of them was fairly co-written. The second one I mostly wrote. I mean, the first one I would say it wasn't, well, no, that one was my idea. The first one, We No Care. And I would say I wrote 75 to 80% of that. I had a collaborator that had a few scenes. But the overall story certainly was mine. The End of Art, it was not my idea. It was Bruce Bennett's who started it and co-directed, although I basically directed it, but I mean, that's fine. I wrote that. I had the same person help me who helped with the first one, but again, I basically wrote it. I basically did write that one. And then The Key was completely mine. I had some help. It wasn't really help. It was like, hey, take a look at this. And certainly, again, valuable input and some changes, but nothing structurally, nothing that would like get any sort of writer credit. So the point is, as you continue to watch me write in the script, and I don't know if this is a bad or good idea not to even be commenting on what I'm writing. I felt like I've done plenty of that. The point is, so I made those 3 movies. I knew from the outset that they weren't going to be box office sensations, but I wanted to make them to see if I could make them, and I did make them. The first 2, unfortunately, technology-wise, were mini DV, which you may not even know what that is anymore. And when I think of, if you could go back and reshoot them, would that make them better movies? I mean, it would make them look better. I think the acting could have been better, especially in the first one. The acting in the second one was pretty strong for the most part. The third movie that's on Amazon Prime, The Key, that was HD. And I mean, it looks fine. It sounds pretty good. Is it a very good movie? I don't know, because I haven't gotten that much feedback from disinterested people who have watched it. I don't think anyone would watch it and say they hated it. I don't think they'd say, "Oh, this is a horrible movie." I've had, generally good feedback. One guy said I can't remember if he thought there was too much dialogue or it just wasn't. I can't remember the exact criticism. But, I would say I'm increasingly proud of each of those, or satisfied maybe is a better word to use. And, financially they cost virtually nothing to make, and that's about how much money they've made. So it was definitely by far an investment in time over money. And of course, they say time is the most precious of our resources for reasons philosophical that they're not really. There's no need to go into them. So I don't know where I'm leading myself other than, because this, as I've said before, if I had $2 or $3 million of my own money or someone else's, I could easily make this movie. I made a post the other day on Facebook when I saw that Francis Ford Coppola is going to invest like $120 million into his Megalopolis, or whatever his new project is called. And I said, if I had $50 million, I would spend 10 million to make Ripple, a screenplay that I wrote prior to this and that I need to do something with. This one, I would not want to say, and I don't think anyone would want to say, "Oh, I wouldn't invest my own money in this," because what does that say? How does that speak for your confidence in the movie? But I think, again, if I had $2 million, would I spend every penny of it to make this movie? No. If I had 10 million, would I spend 2 million to make this? That's an excellent question. If I had no guarantee of distribution, I don't know. I don't know if I could convince my wife of that. If I had a deal, and you could ask yourself this, and again, the only way that this whole series is going to get any viewership is if this movie does get made. I guess I would convince myself of that by now. I don't see any other avenue unless some screenwriting teacher, professor, guru stumbles on it and assigns it to his or her class or recommends it or something. Which, well, that's another topic. Where I was going with that is that if a production company or a producer, let's say I was in conversations with them and the person said, "Well, I'm looking for this sort of thing, this sort of property for this actor, actress, whatever. If you write something, send it to me, and if I like it, there's a chance, or I wouldn't say a good chance, but there's a chance that I'll do something with it and obviously pay you. So if that person said, I'll buy the script from you, obviously, blah, 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 that'd be awesome. But if I had $2 million sitting around or whatever it would cost to make this, and I haven't broken it down, obviously, because I haven't finished writing it. But if I had the opportunity, knowing that there might be some potential interest in it, and the person said, I don't know how that would work. If the person said, I'll give you $2 million if you deliver a finished movie to me that I like. Now that would be interesting. That would never happen, of course, because, well, I shouldn't say that. But that's a what if. So the question is, if that would happen, would I? Well, I'd have to quit my job, and I'd have to figure in enough in the budget to pay myself for 2 years or whatever. But then, of course, what would you do after that? Would you get another job? I don't know. This is kind of crazy hypothetical talk, but that's where my mind is going this morning. So I don't know. I think I began this whole long diatribe because now I'm debating whether it's worth putting these up on Facebook and Script Revolution. Not that I'm still going to put them on YouTube, but is it worth? And it after I've gone to all this trouble, it takes 30 seconds to do the actual putting the links on Facebook and Script Revolution. So it's not like, is it worth my time to do that? But do I present myself in a positive way by doing this, by thinking, I'm helping someone, I'm trying to get views. I don't know what the people who poo-poo this and tell me, quit doing it, you're wasting my time. I don't understand their point of view, because obviously they don't have to click on it. When they see a post, they can just run their eyes past it and go on to the next one. And very few of these, other than one kind person who likes them. As I said, virtually no one's watching them. And so I'm just debating with myself, is it worth doing this? Someone suggested making a Facebook page specifically for this, which I still think is a very good idea. Maybe I'll do that and just make an announcement and say, hey, I'm going to start posting them here if anyone wants to follow. And maybe I'd be surprised. Maybe I wouldn't. But as I talk that through, I think I am going to do that and just not post them elsewhere. And obviously, if someone has seen one, they can go to my YouTube channel and find the playlist. But at least they'll be there for the record. And if and when, again, I know in a typical script, it's literally 1,000,000 to 1 probably. In this, it's probably 100 to 1, maybe 500, maybe 10. Depends how good the script turns out. That something will happen to it and it will one day get made, because I do think it would be a valuable resource. And I could be totally wrong, but I still think people can learn from this, especially brand new writers or people that are interested. Obviously, if you've been writing for a long time, you'll get very little out of this. You might commiserate or say, wow, he does it differently than I do. He does it better or worse. But I think, if nothing else, it could show, and it doesn't have to be a young person, but it could be someone who is just getting into screenwriting or thinking about it or dipping her toe into the deep end or the shallow end. What does it really take to write a script? What does someone go through while writing a script? And having said that, I by no means would put myself out as representative of this is how a script is written. Because, as I've said, I think this is really taking the long road. It's been 179 days of writing, plus some days off for good behavior or bad behavior. And does the typical writer take this long? I doubt he or she would know, because he or she has not documented the process. Certainly, in renaming your file every day, which I always do, and I assume most writers do, I would hate to think that they don't. You could go back and see how many versions of the script you had, which, man, if I did that on some of my scripts, that would just be crazy. I'm not going to, because it might be severely disheartening, but it would be super interesting. Maybe I should ask that question. That would be a good question to ask. How many days do you spend writing, and do people resave it under, save as every day so they can go back, which again, I've been doing for a long time, and I don't know why you wouldn't do that. So that would give one a good indication of A, how long it took, and B, how many versions. Well, they're not really versions. So it would be some indication of, did you work on this for 20 days, 50 days, 100 days? And wow, the more I think about it, if I went back and checked, maybe this wouldn't be out of the extraordinary, because I know there's scripts that I've worked on for several years on and off, but how many days I've actually worked on them. Anyways, getting back to the point of, will this ever be of utility to a screenwriter or someone? I guess if I didn't think it would, I wouldn't keep doing it. But again, that could be delusions, not of grandeur, but just of that this could be some this could be of some value to someone somewhere down the road. Well, I don't know. I don't think I've ever talked for 22 minutes and 20 seconds about non-specific script-related stuff. And I haven't hardly been even watching the screen as I do this voiceover. I've just kind of been staring off into space to collect and gather and spew out my thoughts with as little incorrect English or run-on sentences as possible. You do recognize how easy it is to speak in run-on sentences and go from thought to thought when you're talking like this. All right, let me just spend the rest of the time, which is about 6 minutes, seeing where I am today, because I literally haven't been paying attention. I'm on page 55, so I'm about halfway through the script. And halfway through the script, as we know, is the false victory or false defeat. And in this case, it is the fact that they've been taken, kidnapped, whatever's happened. I really had to force, at least in this version you saw, I just jumped back, but Hogan mentioned clicks being the giveaway that he was in the military, clicks being short for kilometers. And so I kind of forced that in to some extent, and I still need to work on that and decide if it's really important or not. Also, when I introduce Hogan, I say man a couple times, and I still don't know the best way to do that. And I know, if you just say Hogan from the beginning when you can't see him, I need to ask that question again. Why did I jump back here? Okay, I'm trying to justify the helicopter part here. He says, the woman you're meeting arrived 10 minutes ago. I didn't see a car out front. She was dropped off, ? Then I cut out some dialogue. It is so funny how I just jumped back. But I think it was because I was trying to figure out the logistics or how that would work if someone flew a helicopter in. If Holly and gang got there right now and Rachel got there 20 minutes ago, certainly the helicopter would have had plenty of time to fly off and not be heard. Probably even, 5 minutes would be plenty of time. But for the purpose of this, again, this is one of those things that you could just beat yourself up on trying to explain and making it all perfect and everything. But if you're telling a good story, hopefully the audience will not question that because they'll be too busy, getting invested in the story to stop afterwards on the walk home or when they're doing drive home or when they're sitting on the couch afterwards. And I say, hey, I wonder how blah, 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 blah. And if they wonder, that's fine. But if it bothers them and they start thinking, well, wait a minute, I just poked a hole in that, which sometimes happens even after a good movie. You're sitting around and you start poking holes in it. And sometimes you go, oh, I guess that wasn't that good of a movie, which is kind of a funny thing to say. The experience is what counts. All right, so now I'm back on page 55. But this is just getting into the weeds. Excuse me. I mean, it's not really getting into the weeds, but when he mentions the Rich Mountain Airport 40 clicks away, time that brought him in. So what Holly's thinking is that these two bad guys flew in and they're going to go back to that airport, and that's how they're going to get Lexi out. You're not involved. Hogan, I'm not in love with this scene right here. Again, I'm just imagining someone watching and listening to this. And if it was a movie that they had seen or heard about, that could be super interesting to go through and go, oh my gosh, he really wrote that? Why didn't he leave that in? Or who cut that out? Or they might say, wow, that sucks. I'm glad he cut that out. So I still think there is utility in the long term if something happens to this. But if it joins the pile of scripts that is like Mount Everest in size that never go anywhere, then probably not. Helicopter. So now Luke's remembering the helicopter that they heard while they were fishing. I've got an orphan letter word. It's funny how I just go back and fix those right away. So this is really kind of getting into the weeds, and when you come up with something and then you spend screen time and or writing time trying to either justify it, trying to explain it, I guess at a certain point you have to say, do I really need this plot point if I've got to explain myself or what? So the day is done, gone the sun, see ya.